What if the Axis powers had won World War II? I mean, just think about that for a second. It's a really chilling question, and it's one that has fascinated us for decades. We see it all the time in books and movies, but what was the actual plan? Today, we're going to dive into that very idea, a history that, thankfully, never happened.
Now, this isn't just going to be wild speculation. We're going to peel back the layers of that question. First, we'll look at how we've imagined an Axis victory in fiction, and then we're going to compare it to the horrifying, documented reality of what the Nazis actually had in mind.
For a lot of us, our first real encounter with this whole idea probably came from pop culture. Novels like The Man in the High Castle or Fatherland. They've painted these incredibly vivid and frankly terrifying pictures of what life could have been like under a victorious Third Reich. So, how have these stories really shaped the way we think about an Axis victory? Well, it turns out once you start looking, they tend to follow some pretty clear patterns.
Generally, these stories fall into one of two camps. On the one hand, you've got your nightmare scenarios. These paint a world so absolutely awful that they basically reinforce the idea that our own reality, with all its flaws, is the best we could have hoped for. But then, on the other hand, you have fantasies, which use this alternate world as a kind of mirror to critique our own society, to point out where we could be doing better.
And you'll start to notice the same building blocks, the same tropes pop up over and over again. There's almost always a good German, that lone hero resisting from the inside. The Holocaust is often shown as this deeply guarded state secret that nobody knew about. And the New World Order, it's usually this tense Cold War between Germany and Japan, with America just sitting on the sidelines, weakened and isolationist. These fictional worlds are really compelling, no doubt about it. But here's the pivot. This is the crucial part. While all these authors were busy imagining these futures, the Nazi leadership wasn't just imagining. They were planning, meticulously.
So now, we're going to move away from speculation and into the chilling documented reality of what the Nazis actually wanted to do to the world.
Okay, at the absolute heart of the entire Nazi vision was this one concept, Lebensraum. It translates to living space. Hitler was completely obsessed with this idea that Germany's destiny was to violently conquer Eastern Europe, to colonize its land, and to crush its people, to create this huge, supposedly racially pure German empire. And this idea of Lebensraum, it wasn't just some vague dream. Oh no, it was going to be achieved through two interconnected, terrifyingly detailed master plans. The first of these was called General Plan Ost. This was the actual blueprint for the total ethnic and racial re-engineering of Eastern Europe. It called for the systematic expulsion, enslavement, and, yes, the mass extermination of tens of millions of Slavic people. All of it to make way for German settlers. And that was paired with the second pillar, the hunger plan. This was literally a state policy to weaponize starvation. The plan was as simple as it was brutal. Seize every last bit of food from the rich farmlands of Ukraine and southern Russia, ship it back to Germany, and then just let the local population starve to death by the millions. The numbers here are they're almost impossible to wrap your head around. The hunger plan alone was designed to deliberately kill 30 million people. This wasn't a byproduct of war, it wasn't collateral damage. It was a primary objective of the war. And this quote from Heinrich Himmler, the architect of the Holocaust, it just says everything you need to know. He saw entire nations of people as nothing more than obstacles to be removed or tools to be used as slaves for German culture or culture. Their lives had zero value beyond that. And here's what's so critical to understand. This genocidal vision wasn't just limited to the SS fanatics. The entire German military, the Wehrmacht, was ordered to wage what they called a war of annihilation. Soldiers were given illegal orders to execute political officers on the spot, to treat civilians and prisoners with utter brutality. This just shatters that myth that came out after the war of a clean or blameless regular army that was just following orders. So this brings us to a really fascinating question. If the documented reality of the Nazi plans was so much worse than almost anything you see in fiction, why do we keep going back to these fictional stories? Well, the answer seems to lie in this concept called alternate memory. The idea is that these what-if stories are more than just entertainment. They're actually a powerful tool that we use to process, to interpret, and sometimes even to reshape our collective memory of these huge historical events. You know, these narratives do a lot for us. They help us try to grapple with the trauma of history, they let us explore these deep questions of morality and resistance, and they can even be a way to critique what's happening in our own time. But there's a risk. By focusing on these fictional scenarios, they can sometimes, maybe unintentionally, downplay or even relativize what actually happened.
And that brings us right back to that popular character, the good German. It's a comforting idea, isn't it? A lone hero fighting a corrupt system from within. But the historical plans we just looked at, they reveal a totally different and much more chilling picture. A system of annihilation that didn't just need a few bad guys at the top. It required the active participation and widespread complicity of countless people. Exploring this alternate history, both the fiction and the horrifying reality, it really forces us to face some deeply unsettling questions about our own past and our present. So I think if there's one crucial takeaway, it's this. The world we live in today was not inevitable. It's so easy to take it for granted, but it was forged in the fire of resistance against a documented, bureaucratic, and fully planned genocide on a scale that's hard to even imagine. Which leaves us with one last thing to think about. When we engage with these alternate histories, are we finding a new way to preserve the memory of what was at stake? Or, in our fascination with what might have been, do we risk forgetting the terrifying truth of what actually was?